welcome, folks. Can't see you, no idea who's there. My name's Laura Waite, and I'm one of the lecturers in Special Educational Needs and Disability Studies. It's very strange to be just talking at a screen and not being able to see anyone. Okay, so that's a beautiful photograph of the campus. In fact, I'm quite sad looking at it because the students call this the Harry Potter halls, this old bit of the building, and actually my office, oh, I've lost my cursor. My office used to be just there. I used to look out onto that beautiful lawn, but I've moved to a rather ugly 1970s block now. And that's essentially because we've recently been rehoused in the School of Social Science, whereas previously we were in the School of Education. So I'm just going to talk you through some kind of basic information about the course, about the subject. So disability studies is our kind of overarching subject name, and I'll explain a bit more when I look at the curriculum as to why we're called that. But kind of under our, so we're housed in the School of Social Science along with things like sociology, childhood and youth, social policy, social work, etc. Our subject has got if you like, a range of different strands to it. So at the top there, there is the Centre for Culture and Disability Studies. So we're quite fortunate in that we are home to one of the university's research centre. And what that actually means, particularly for our students, is that they get to be involved in that as a research centre. So the centre has a conference every 2 years. It runs a seminar series across each year, and our students are all welcome, all free events. But a lot of our students from first years through to masters, doctoral students will get involved in that. We then have our, so in orange there is what we call our undergraduate programme, yeah, which is what I'm guessing that you are here to hear about today. And I'll run through how that fits together in a second. But again, we have a master's programme, and many of our students who do their bachelor's with us then go on to do the MA. And then some of our students again go one further and they either do a professional doctorate or a PhD, so they'll go to doctoral level studies. And another important part of our subject actually is our external partners as well. So we have partnerships with a whole range of organisations across Liverpool that work with disabled people. So some of those are schools. So we have strong links with Sandfield Park in West Derby, which is a secondary special school. We have links with Guide Dogs for the Blind, with a company called Daisy, which provides sporting activities for disabled young people. Rushton Futures, which is a service for school leavers who are described as having profound and multiple learning difficulties, Dada Fest, and Young Dada in particular. So in Liverpool, we're fortunate to have this organisation called Deaf and Disability Arts that has a huge festival every second year. And we have connections with the youth strand of that organisation. So we cover, you know, a lot more than just our undergraduate programme. And I'm just showing a slide there then of the people who are in our team. One of the more attractive teams, I think, across the university. But I'm just showing you those because we come from a really diverse range of backgrounds, if you like. And again, you know, students really value that. So Dr. Claire Penketh at the top, I'm not going to run through absolutely everyone, but I just kind of wanted to give you a bit of a flavour of kind of people's backgrounds, if you like. So, but Dr. Claire Penketh is important because she's our head of subject. And she has taught, she's done some teaching on her first year, and she's done some teaching on our final year as well. And she's got a background in secondary art education. So she very much comes from an education background, as does Owen, there in the middle, and Alan. I myself there, so I'm the second photograph there. I started my life out as a social worker, and then later retrained in speech and hearing therapy. And then you have people like Ria, for example. So Ria's background, some colleagues come from a more traditional academic route, if you like. So bachelor's, master's, a doctorate, and then into an academic post. And so that's similar to Ria. Ria's background is in English literature, but she has a particular interest in the way in which disability is represented in literature. That's similar to Dr. David Bolt there below Ria. He is the he's in charge of the research centre, and similarly he started his research off looking at in particular how disability is represented in sci-fi. So a real kind of mixed bag. Some of us, as I say, with that come from a professional background, others who come with that academic background. And that means that our research interests are really diverse, and our teaching can be really diverse as well. Okay, that's the team. And you would be taught, although we have kind of particular teaching teams, you would be taught at some point by everyone in the team. So lectures, for example, through your first year at university, you would meet all of these colleagues because they would all deliver lectures throughout the year. But then you will get to know some of those tutors much more through our kind of tutorial system. And it's worth just, pointing out that obviously universities, obviously teaching is a large part of what we do, but also, universities are around knowledge generation as well, not just passing knowledge on. So everyone in the department are active researchers, and I'm just showing a range of publications there. Either what we call monologues, so single-authored books that have been done by members of our team, or there's a couple at the bottom here which are what we refer to as edited books, where many of us have got chapters, etc. So we're all active in our research. In terms of how it fits together, you've got a choice. You can either do our subject as a single honours programme, and that means that all of your study is within our subject. Your years, a degree is made up of, oh gosh, I've forgotten, 120, 360 credits. So if you were doing single honours in your first year, you would take 60 credit block called Introduction to Special Educational Needs, and then you would do another 60 credit block which is called Introduction to Applied Social Science, and that's a general social science course where you get to cover a whole range of different subjects, some of which are disability related, but we look at quite a lot of kind of social issues within that, and it's just to kind of give you that broad foundations to kind of going on to study what is a, often seen as a social science subject of disability studies. So that would be your 120 credits. And we call that C because it stands for certificate, but that's year one. We have students who might come in at level F, which is the foundation year. We've got a number of students again starting with us in September, having just completed their foundation year. So that's another really great way into the programme. Students then, once they finish their first year, move into second year, which we call level I, which stands for intermediate. And again, if you were doing our subject as a single honours programme, you would do this 60 credit block called Explorations in Special Educational Needs, and then another 60 credit block called Explorations in Disability Studies in Education. And so that means that at this point you really are kind of getting stuck in to the subject. Students, what often happens, it'll really, obviously with the pandemic, it will be interesting to see what happens numbers wise. But generally speaking, we might have round about 100 students who are studying us as a combined subject, but then those students who decide to do it as single honours maybe round about 20. So that other half of your course there is often a really nice coherent group that go through their degree together. In your first year, you'll get a personal tutor. You'll be taught in a variety of ways. You'll have larger seminars, which are much more kind of active, where you do group work, etc. You'll have the same tutor every week for that, though. You'll also have a 1 hour tutorial, which we have in groups of 10 to 1. And the person who's responsible for that will be your personal tutor for your first couple of years at university. They're there to look after you, look after your pastoral needs. We have a pretty kind of open door policy. Really, so you'll get to know those tutors really well. And then your final year then is what we call level H, which is the honours year. And as a single honours student then, you would take 45 credits of a course called Advanced Studies in Special Educational Needs, 45 credits of Advanced Studies in Disability Studies in Education, and then you would have this 30 credits research block. And that is where you will do a joint research project within disability studies. For those of you that are thinking of studying our subject as a combined honours, then the framework looks fairly similar, except you would just be doing this half. So you, in the first year, you would do Introduction to Special Educational Needs, and then you would do Introduction to whatever your other subject is, education, early childhood, sociology, etc. And then the same again at level I, explorations in special educational needs, and then explorations in your other subject. Sometimes students might complete, they might be combined in first year, but then decide that actually they've really enjoyed one of their subjects, and at that point we will often let students then go single honours. And similarly at level H, you can do something that we call single exit. So if you had got to your final year and you think to yourself, I would really just like to focus on special education needs and disability studies, you could move into that single exit. When you get to your final year then, you would, as a combined student, you would do 45 credits with us, 45 credits with your other subject, and then you would either do a combined research project, which is what most students do, whereby you bring together those two subjects, and that can be in a range of ways. I've done all sorts of, I'm trying to think, my students this year who are doing combined project. I have a lot of drama students. I've had a student who's been looking at the use of drama with disabled, drama in schools with disabled young people. I've had a lot of, I haven't had any this year, but I often get a lot of students who are combining with sport and PE, for example. And you get like a joint, you'll be supervised jointly by both of your subjects to bring them together. Or alternatively, if you're doing subjects that really are just so massively different, you can do two half-size research projects. So a typical one there would be perhaps a student who is doing our subject alongside maths, and students there will do two small 15 credits. You'll be built up to doing research right the way across your degree. So it might sound a bit daunting having to do a research project at the end, but right the way through level C, level I, etc., will be pushing you towards doing your own piece of research. So that's the structure of either single honours or combined honours. And, you know, it is possible to change. So if, for example, you start as combined honours, and then there's generally a 2-3 week window right at the very beginning where you're able to make a swap. Should you think to yourself, yeah, absolutely, or, you know, I've made the wrong decision, etc. So there's always kind of flexibility there. Okay, so if I think about, so I lead the first year, I have done for a long time. If we look at so this would be your first year curriculum then. It's kind of, we have something called an integrated curriculum, and that essentially means that it is, rather than you having lots of different modules to pick from, that can sometimes make you know, the overall experience quite kind of bitty, if you like. So we have something that we call the integrated curriculum, which means that you are really able to get to really study your subject in a really kind of coherent way, if you like. We often have the reason why we have these four particular themes is that we will have international students who study with us, which is great, and they tend to come for perhaps a 6-week block of study. So that's the reason why we chunk our curriculum up into these kind of blocks. So it might be that we have, you know, some French students, some Spanish students, etc., who are studying with our classes as well, and that brings a real richness to study. And actually going abroad yourself, again, not sure where the pandemic will leave us, or even that little thing that we've forgotten about called Brexit. But I would imagine that there will still be those opportunities. We've certainly hoping that we've got some of our second year students who are going to go and do a semester abroad starting in September. So you have those kind of options too. So here we're thinking about some of the some of the foundation knowledge that you really need to know in order to move on to your studies. An important thing to say about our curriculum is that what it is not, because it is underpinned by disability studies, it's underpinned by the scholarship of the academic discipline of disability studies. And what that means is that our interest is in equality. What you won't study on the course is kind of what's wrong with people. Um, if you're studying this subject at university, really, university is about really digging deeper into knowledge. Yeah, it's about developing your capacity to be critical, to be able to weigh things up, to be able to read and draw your own conclusions and make your own arguments about things. And in order to really get that depth, we draw on this academic discipline. Um, if you wanted to know what Down syndrome was, for example, you could just Google that. Our course is not about teaching you what Down syndrome is and how to teach them. The course is about, we'll look much more at, you know, why as a society have we come to devalue people with Down syndrome? Why would we, what is it in our society that encourages, you know, the statistic that, you know, 90% of babies with Down pregnancies where the baby will have Down syndrome are aborted? What has led to people making that decision? So it won't be about people's impairments that we're looking at. Instead, it will be looking at much more broadly society and then education. What is it about those things that cause us to think about and respond to disabled children, young people, adults in the way that we do? So we take you on a bit of a journey. We take you back right at the beginning in your first year. You'll think about history, and we'll think about the time when there wasn't such a word as disability. We'll think about a time when disabled people were just simply part of their community, with roles and jobs, etc. And it wasn't a thing. Inequality wasn't a thing. And we'll kind of look through, so when did inequality start to arise? What's happened in our history that has meant that we think about disabled people in the way that we do now? And we'll think about the how we came to institutionalize people. We'll think about the rise of science and the rise of medicine and what that has done to the way in which we conceptualize the body and what the body and mind should be supposedly able to do, etc. So we start you with some history. You'll then do a block of themes around what we refer to as disability and culture. And I'll go into that in a bit more in a minute, and I'll look more specifically at like assessment of that particular block. We then have a kind of loose theme called disability and normalcy, and in that we're thinking about this idea that you know, where did the idea of normal come from? Why do we consider some people to be abnormal? Why do we have the need to label these things we call abnormalities? What are some of the issues around the language in the way in which we other people? And then finally, there's again a loose kind of theme there called disability and diversity. And in that section, while we do explore particular impairments, so we'll look at psychiatric impairment, people with learning difficulties, people who might identify as having dyslexia, people who might have physical impairment. We're not actually again looking at anatomy and physiology, yeah. we're looking at the way in which we think about those things. So if we think about when we look at, for example, physical impairment, what our interest is the notions about how we conceptualize the physical body and physical movement, and what kind of things kind of influence the way in which we would value um, walking over wheeling in a wheelchair, for example. So again, you will look at much kind of deeper ideas around that. And if we just have a little think then, oh, my little Google assistant's just gone off. I don't know why, sorry. Disability and culture. So Colin Barnes here, he is someone, he's actually a retired professor now, but he's someone who's students will read a lot of in our subject. He said back in 91 here, he said, we learn about disability through the media, and in the same way that racist or sexist attitudes, whether implicit or explicit, are acquired, so too are negative assumptions about disability. So one of the things that you will explore right the way through your degree, actually, and people will even do their research project in this area, and that is to look at particular types of media texts and the way in which disability is represented in those. You know, how is disability being used in the narrative, for example? Because that tells us a lot about our attitudes towards. And if you think about it, so I'm just showing a screen there of a series of images of various what we refer to as kind of cultural text or media text. In cultural studies, text isn't just about written text. Text is the overarching term that is given. And so I'm showing here things like so literature like of Mice and Men. So these are all things that in some way include disability. There's Clarissa of Silent Witness. I'm gutted she's gone out of it, actually. She's one of my favourite characters. Family Guy, chat magazines, charity adverts, comedy. I've got The Last Leg there. The Guardian, so tabloids and broadsheets. Films, so there's Me Before You there, and The Greatest Showman, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Wonder. We've got the Paralympics there. I don't know if anyone's, I'm a big Holby City fan. Again, just showing one particular character there who identifies as autistic. There's an advert there at the bottom, and then the Undateables. So one of the things that you'll do in your first year in particular, and it's the kind of main assessment that runs across the first kind of term and a half, really, and that is that you will select, you choose a media text, and you will write about the way in which disability is being used. Obviously, we're going to give you the tools to do that, because in the disability and culture block, that's exactly the kind of thing that your classes will be on. You'll get lectures on disability in film, disability in literature, etc., etc. And then in your tutorials and your seminars, you'll then, discuss those. You'll do a whole range of different activities that relate to that, because it's a really good way to gauge what's happening with disability, if you like, the way in which disability is talked about. If you are to, look at more historical programs, so you'll know, if we take a good example actually in terms of the Black Lives Matter, and the fact that the BBC chose to take off Little Britain from all its, so you can look over time at the way in which disability has been used. but also it gives us a really good understanding of where misconceptions can come from about disabled people. So if we think about the fact that many people, their only experience of disability will be through what they watch, what they read, what they listen to, what they see on social media. Yeah, if you think about that's where people get educated about disability, then we can start to see how particular stereotypes can arise. For example, so if we think about Me Before You as a film, there's a particular stereotype where we think about being disabled as a kind of fate worse than death, if you like, that it must be so dreadful to be a disabled person that actually you'd want to end your own life. And of course, that's not true. That is a misconception and a stereotype, and that is perpetuated through films like Me Before You. Um, Interestingly, another issue that comes out of that, Me Before You, played by a non-disabled person. Yeah, you're not telling me that there aren't disabled people, disabled actors who could have done that job. Whereas if we think about Holby City here over on the right, and I've forgotten his flipping name, Jason. Jason identifies as autistic, and plays a character who is autistic. So very different. And we used to have, in fact, again, thinking about Little Britain being taken off because of, in particular, characters that blacked up. We have a term in our subject which is called cripping up. And so in a way what we would refer to the actor in Me Before You as, you know, someone who is cripping up. But things have really changed over time. And again, one of the so your media portfolio, and I marked one just recently of a student who had looked at Clarissa in Silent Witness. And she really argued beautifully just how what a kind of proactive and good representation of disability that character has been. She's very much seen as an equal with all the other scientists, you know, working in that department, etc. It's not tugging on people's heartstrings as you might get in other types of film. So that's the kind of thing that you might explore. And if I just think about then, so the media portfolio, as I say, is one of your main assessments, and the way in which that works is that quite soon on when you arrive, you'll do your first entry to your portfolio. There are just 6 entries in total. And we ask you in the first instance to have a look to try and find a broadsheet newspaper article that features in some way disability, special educational needs, and we just ask you to write about it. What we then do, so you do that, I think you get 500 words to do that one. Your then tutor, who you meet with every week as part of your tutorial, they mark it, they will provide feedback. You'll get one-to-one. We like to do one-to-one tutorials with students so we can really, you know, check that you're settling in and be able to talk through the actual feedback with you. The idea then is that you then submit the next portfolio a bit later on, and this time there'll be 2 entries, and that might be a tabloid or a chat magazine, a book or a film, and what we're looking for in that is that all of the feedback that your tutor gave you in the first entry, we want to see that you have addressed in your second entry. So the whole point of it is very much a kind of developmental piece. you're not expected to arrive at university with all of those skills in what we call academic literacy skills. So being able to read complex texts, being able to write in a very formal way, there isn't that expectation that you can do that. And students come, sometimes they'll arrive at university with those skills. Perhaps they'd done English literature, perhaps they'd done subjects in their A levels where you got much more practice at writing essays, for example, or drawing on reading and referencing. Other students might not come with those, so it really so you're supported right the way through your degree to really develop those academic literacy skills as well. And the media portfolio is great for doing that. And then there'll be a third entry which comes after Christmas, whereby you put in another 3. And again, we're looking for that development, and you'll be marked on your development. There's a shortest essay there, but again, it's you're very well supported with your assessments. You will get sessions on it. You'll get opportunities to practice in tutorials. Etc. And then there's just a question mark there at the end, and that is because the university, usually all subjects have an exam at the end. And what we only literally heard yesterday was that for first year students, they've just made the decision that we don't have to have exams for first years. So the reason why there's a question mark there is because we're going to develop something new. And at the moment, we're thinking possibly we try and do things that are creative, and again where you get choice. So we're thinking possibly about something, I don't know, something to do with Twitter or a blog, etc. But yeah, so there's a question mark there. As you go through your degree, again, you're always really well supported with your assessments. If you're engaged in your studies, you'll know exactly what you need to do for all of your assessments. So even though, and again, if you're someone who worries about exams, the exams for us are very, very different. You're not being taught now to have to remember things. You are learning at a much deeper level. You don't have to be able to just recall bits of information. So when you do have exams in second and final year, they are very much just about you demonstrating your learning, and you'll get opportunities to think about the questions. They're very difficult to fail, our exams. We're not a lover of them, but it's a university. But as I say, in first year, we're not going to have one now. So that's good news. And then I think that is probably it from me. That's me at the bottom, my email address. And then Claire is, as I say, the head of subject. So you can always contact either of us for any information at all. Jen, are there any questions, do you know?
We haven't got any at the moment, but if we give you a minute or so, if you want to type a question in the Q&A box, if you've got anything to ask, it could be about the course, it could be about the university, anything about life at Hope that you want to know, we can hopefully give you an answer. So if you've got any questions, just pop it in the Q&A. And if not, I think we can be done early. But we'll just give you
It's not like me to go under time. I'm pretty famous for rambling in my lectures. Well, not rambling, but I do go off piste quite a lot. I end up telling endless anecdotes about, oh, I remember a time when blah blah blah. So yeah, go on, ask me a question. I dare you. Anyone a Liverpool supporter? You can raise your hand, I think.
Doesn't look like. Just me.
Just you, boo. Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think we can call that then. Okay.
Yeah.
So
All
yeah.
right. Well, thanks, folks. And give us a shout if you have any other questions.
Uh,
Oh. Oh no.
oh, someone said thank you.
Oh, did they? Oh God. Let me get rid of me. There we go. Oh, that's kind. Oh yeah, chat. Oh, good morning. Oh no, that was you. But that was a question. Close. All right, my darling. Are you closing it down then?
But I don't know if I need to close it or whether I just need to put because I've got this slide on that says the next one's at 1 o'clock, and I don't know if they just want us to keep it open but have the slide just saying that we're kind of in between sessions.
Oh, I see. So what time?
Welcome.
All right, there you go.
Thank you. Welcome to this presentation. This is for subjects in disability studies, which includes our major in special educational needs and our single honours programme, Special Educational Needs and Disability Studies. My name is Dr. Claire Penketh. I'm the subject lead for disability studies based in the School of Social Sciences. And you're very welcome to this open day presentation. As you can see on this first slide, our absolutely beautiful campus at Hope Park. A shame that we can't be there today, but at least it gives you a little bit of an indication of some of the beautiful buildings and the campus facilities that we've got here. So it's my job today to take you through an introduction to some of the team who will be working with you should you decide to join us on one of our programmes, and to give you a little bit of an overview of the topics and the areas of interest. There'll also be opportunities for you to add some questions if you want to do that in the Q&A aspects here. So just moving on to the subject here, which is shown centrally on our diagram. We are based in the School of Social Sciences. Our main focus is disability studies, so that's our subject team. And I'll just talk you through some of the main aspects of the work that we do. On the top of our diagram, you can see here we are part of our Centre for Culture and Disability Studies. Our work is very much research informed. The Centre for Culture and Disability Studies is our international research centre where we welcome partners from a range of different international contexts who participate in conferences, develop publications and research projects with us. On going round to my right, we have our programmes, the BA SEN and our single honours programme in SEN and disability studies. So those are our two undergraduate programmes. In addition to that, we have our MA in disability studies, and we also have a master's provision in special educational needs. And I'd be happy to take questions about that postgraduate provision as well. We have students who study with us on the EdD, which is professional doctorate, as well as PhD programmes. And we have a range of different external partnerships, partner organisations that we work with. For example, Daisy UK, a Liverpool-based organisation that works around disability and sport. Dada Fest is another partner organisation who do a lot of work in terms of disability arts. We're partnered with an organisation called Rushden Futures, who work with adults who would be described as having profound and multiple learning difficulties, as well as L'Arche, again, an organisation who work with adults with identified as having learning difficulties. So those range of external partnerships are really, really important to us. If you're deciding to join us on the single honours programme, you have a paired partnership as part of your placement arrangements. And again, I can take some further questions there. But what is central to the work that we do here is disability studies, and that's important as a subject. That subject has evolved over the last, since 1990s, to be very well established in universities, underpinned by the experiences of disabled people and led by their experiences. So a little word about our team here. You can see myself, Dr. Claire Penketh on the top left-hand side, Dr. Laura Waite, who is our first year year lead, and her work is in profound and multiple learning difficulties, as well as a range of other work. Her background is in social work. To the right again is Dr. Anna Pereira, whose research is based around chronic illness. To that right of there is Dr. Ria Cheen. Her work is in literary studies, where she focuses on the way that disability is presented in genre fiction. Dr. David Feeney, below my image, he has developed a lot of work around access to culture for people with visual impairment. Dr. Owen Barden, he is a year lead for the third year of the course in the major in special educational needs. His work is in specific learning difficulties and uses of technology, specifically around that label of dyslexia. I should have said actually that Dr. David Feeney also leads the third year of our single honours provision. To Dr. Barden's right is Dr. Alan Hodkinson. His work is related to a lot of areas actually, in terms of historical perspectives, in terms of education, as well as that he leads on one of the modules on the special educational needs provision. To his right is Professor David Bolt. He is the Centre Director for the Centre for Culture and Disability Studies, and his work is based predominantly on blindness and literary studies. Below my colleague, Dr. Feeney, is Irene Rose. She's currently a student herself on the EdD Professional Doctorate Programme, and she's done quite expansive work in terms of thinking around online learning and inclusive pedagogies. To her right is my colleague, Dr. Marie Caslin, who has developed work around the label of emotional behavioural difficulties. My colleague to the right of her is Dr. Erin Pritchard, who has written extensively around dwarfism. And finally, Dr. Ella Houston, who is year lead for Level I of the Single Honours Programme, and she has developed work around disability and the representation of that in advertising. So a little bit of an overview there. I don't think I've completely covered everybody's role, but at least you get a sense that we are quite a large team. We're very well established, and every one of those colleagues is developing research in their particular area, their particular specialism, and they bring that to the curriculum. So they apply that, and you would have key lectures, seminars and tutorials led by those colleagues who then bring their research to you in that way. So there are just some indication of some research that colleagues have produced here. So Ria Cheen's work on disability literature and genre, my own work there in relation to art education, dyspraxia and drawing, David Bolt's volume on the meta-narrative of blindness, again David Feeney's work on blindness, Alan Hodkinson's key issues in special educational needs. There's a reference there to the Journal of Literary and Cultural Disability Studies that Professor Bolt is the editor-in-chief for, and that's a key journal in our area. An edited volume there of Disability Avoidance in the Academy by myself and Professor David Bolt, and a further edited volume, Changing Social Attitudes Towards Disability. And that is a really key text and gives you a little bit of an indication of the area that we're looking at. It's probably evident now then that we've got what we would describe as an interdisciplinary team with knowledge of education, of culture, of literature, of areas that are applied, for example, teaching, social work, a whole range of areas that we bring to bear in terms of your studies. And that just is to give you a little bit of an indication again of the work that we do is directly around how we can engage with ideas about disability, how we can think about how that works in terms of the social context and educational context of disability, and how we can then proactively work with you, our students, to try and think about the nature of social attitudes and also how we can engage and shift social attitudes towards disability. I'm going to go in now to talk about the structure of our programme. This is a single honours programme, so this is for students who would study disability studies and special educational needs. You'd be studying the whole of your programme with us in social sciences. And our first year of study is referred to as Level C here. And that's blocked basically into two 60-credit blocks. The first part of that is Introduction to Special Educational Needs. So you study for the whole year. Half of your programme is the Introduction to Special Educational Needs. And the first year of your study is an Introduction to Applied Social Sciences. And that we think that's important because that gives you an overview of subjects that are related to social sciences, criminology, sociology, the childhood and youth are all incorporated in there. So those programmes, we bring all our students together and you will have that study in an interdisciplinary context. In the second year of your single honours, you have, again, 60 credits, which is Explorations in Special Educational Needs, and then you have a more focused study at second year of Explorations in Disability Studies in Education. In your third year of study, you have Advanced Studies in Special Educational Needs, that's worth 45 credits, and Advanced Studies in Disability Studies in Education, 45 credits, but you conduct a 30-credit research project or dissertation, and that enables you to really focus in on a particular area of your own interest where you develop a piece of key research of your own. So that's our single honours, and again that's for people who are studying solely with us on that single honours programme in the School of Social Sciences. I can see somebody else has joined us as well, so welcome. It might be though that you're considering studying special educational needs with another subject. So a number of our students study a range of different subjects, for example, early childhood, education studies, sport and physical education, sport and PE. So we've got a range of combinations that people study with. So I won't go into that range of combinations because that information can be confirmed by other colleagues in admissions. But in the Introduction to Special Educational Needs, again, you have half of your course is with us on that Introduction to Special Educational Needs. Half of your programme is with that other chosen subject. It might be, for example, drama, music. Again, there's a range of combinations that can be taken. In your second year, again, you have 60 credits in Explorations in Special Educational Needs, 60 credits in your other subject. And in the third year, you have 45 credits in Advanced Studies in Special Educational Needs, 45 credits in your other subject, and you have a choice then of doing a big research project, a 30-credit dissertation, or you can do 2 separate research projects. Now that's important if, for example, you were studying special educational needs and psychology, you would do a shorter research project with us and a more extended research project with psychology. But again, that detail can be discussed at a later date if you've got any questions on that. So those two slides really should give you a good indication of the structure of the course. It doesn't tell you much about what the actual curriculum content is. So let's just move on. I'm only going to focus on the curriculum for the first year. Really, this is split up into 4 main themes that you can see here. Now, you'll recognise if you want to study special educational needs with us, that the focus here is studying special educational needs from the perspective of disability studies. And as part of that, we see that it's absolutely vital that we're studying these key aspects. So, for example, we look at disability and history, even looking back to sort of ancient history in terms of thinking about ancient Greece. We move through historical perspectives, for example, thinking about the Industrial Revolution and the way that the evolution through industry impacted on the production of disability. Thinking about key ideas in terms of eugenics, for example, and what's described as the T4 project with the Nazi extermination of disabled people. So we see these sort of historical moments having that historical overview of the way that societies conceptualise disability as being really key. So that will be your starting block, really, thinking about disability and history. The second theme there, disability and culture, is a really significant part. And I think if you're looking at courses in other universities, which I would urge you to do, I can describe our provision at Hope is really distinctive in looking at disability and its relationship with culture. So, for example, how is disability represented through the news? I mean, we've seen this highlighted very recently with the pandemic, the implications for the way that disabled people have experienced the pandemic, the way that is reported, for example, in newspapers, the way that disabled people are represented in advertisements. Now, we might wonder what is the importance of these aspects, but it obviously informs the way that we conceptualize disability is really important. So that relationship between disability and culture is a really significant part of our course. Now, again, just to touch back on the research centre, in terms of that being the Centre for Culture and Disability Studies, you'll see now that you're getting a bit of a flavour for what is distinctive about studying special educational needs and disability studies at Hope. The third theme there is disability and normalcy. Drawing on these ideas about actually we have a focus in our society around this idea of disability, but rarely are we asked to consider how normalcy or how ideas about what is so-called normal constructed. So we spend some time thinking about notions of ability as well as thinking about disability and this construction of normalcy. And we've got a final block there on disability and diversity, where we're thinking about diversity more broadly in that theme. So that's the Level C curriculum as it's outlined in 4 key blocks. And so to highlight again, and on the following slides, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about disability and culture, and in terms of trying to explore why that's important, because this is a key concept really that underpins your studies with us. So I'm just going to refer to this quote here from Colin Barnes in 1991. It's quite dated now, but we see that we've got this persistent relationship between disability and culture, which means that this is still very relevant. So Colin Barnes argues here, we learn about disability through the media, and in the same way that racist or sexist attitudes, whether implicit or explicit, are acquired, so too are negative assumptions about disability. So here Barnes is talking to this idea that the way that the media and culture, these ideas are represented, in terms of racist and sexist attitudes, that we are also paying attention to that in relation to the promotion of disabling attitudes in society. And we'd encourage you to think about this now, as students, if you're thinking about whether you come to Hope or not, is to start to really be aware of how disability is represented in the media. So a little bit of an example here of some of the things in first year that we're encouraging people to engage with ideas about representations of disability. And there's a whole range of images here from the sun, for example, the sort of tropes or ideas that are represented there in key headlines. John Reed's brain is missing, this allusion to disability, which is used in a particular way in the media very powerfully. In terms of entertainment, we've got The Greatest Showman there, where there are lots of issues and ideas in terms of the ways that disabled people were showcased. Historically, we engage with those ideas, but also in terms of that contemporary representation. A film there that is in the centre of the slides, Me Before You, based on a novel. And when that film was first issued, there was extensive protests because of the key messages around the idea of suicide in relation to disabled people. So there's a range of different ideas that we'll engage with, but what is most important there is the idea that you are starting to heighten your own awareness in terms of the relationship, for example, between disability and ideas around body image. So on the Heat magazine there, Curvy Girls, again, thinking about notions of disability and how that relates to body image, how it relates to ideas around staring, for example. On the top line there, just something else to highlight in terms of we've got the sponsor a puppy, but these ideas around charity advertising and the relationship between charity advertisements and disability is another theme that we explore quite extensively in the course. So again, we're reflecting on the ways that ability and disability, those ideas are created, and the way that those ideas are projected and expressed in and through the media. And we encourage you to interrogate those and think about those as powerful ways that people receive messages about disability. So a little bit, usually when we have our open days on campus, people are very, very keen to explore the idea around assessments, and we have got some developments happening at the moment, which means that we're reframing our ideas about assessment. In the second and third year of the course, currently students do have an end of year written exam, a formal exam, but we also have a range of other assessments. In the first year of your study, we have a portfolio where you will engage with these ideas about how disability is represented and how social attitudes are developed in relation to disability. And that's done through a media portfolio. Now that's a really nicely designed piece of assessment, which means you'll submit a piece of work quite early. You'll be able to get feedback on that. You will identify a representation of disability, either in the newspaper or through a film, through a range of different contexts, and you produce some short pieces of writing about that. What's important is you get feedback on that and you're able to make changes, and we can see some gradual development through the academic year as we're encouraging you to engage with academic texts to help you to inform your discussion. There is then an essay, again, which seeks to explore ideas around different models of disability. And again, that's something I've not really spoken about, but a key aspect of your course is thinking about a distinction that might be made between what we describe as social and medical models of disability. There's a question mark indicated there because it used to be that we had a third of your course would have been examined through a formal written examination. That has now been removed for the first year of the course, and we're still just developing that third piece of assessment. But you might be relieved to know that that wouldn't be done in an exam in the first year of your course. As I say, in the second and third year, you would have an exam. So that is pretty much me in terms of the initial presentation. There are two key names on the slide. My contact details there, actually, I've just noticed there's, it should say penketc@hope.ac.uk. So as subject lead, you can contact me. The second name on the slide there is Dr. Laura Waite, and I introduced you to her initially. And she would be a contact because she is our first year coordinator. So she is the year lead for the first year of our course. And we're both available to take any questions from you. But I can open up also to Q&A in the last remaining moments now in terms of this presentation. So Jen, can I hand back to you?
Yeah, thanks Claire. So if anyone's got any questions, if you want to pop it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there. I'll give you a couple of minutes in case anyone's a bit of a slow typer. But yeah, if you've got any questions, ask away. It can be about the course, it could be about the university, life at Hope in general, any kind of questions that you've got, pop it in, and I'll hopefully be able to give you an answer to it.
Thanks, Jen. Do you think we covered everything that we needed to?
Yeah, I think we did. I think it was a great presentation.
It's always a little bit strange for us. So we usually obviously can see people in the room with us, and we generally have some really nice conversations. Often people bring in their own experiences to bear, and we can have some really good discussions there. We've got one question, have we? The Q&A?
Yeah. How many lecture and tutor hours are there for this course?
So you have 6 hours in terms of contact hours for each half of the course. So if you were doing a single honours, that would be 12 hours in the first year. If you are doing a combined course, you have 6 hours with us and 6 hours with your other subject. In the second year, that goes to 5 hours. So 10 hours in total of directed taught time. And again, in the third year of your course, you have 10 hours again. At the moment, that has just been redesigned. Traditionally, you would have had 3 hours of lectures in that 6 hours, 2 hours in a seminar and 1 hour of a tutorial. But we've now developed into some online provision, obviously, because of the the current situation. But basically, you will have 6 hours contact per 60 credit block, 12 hours in total in the first year of the course. The way that is timetabled, I'll just say a little bit more about that. That is usually timetabled. So, for example, our first year on the SEN part of the course, the special educational needs part of the course, is timetabled largely to Thursday and Friday afternoon. And your other subject will be blocked in a similar way, and there will be spaces in the curriculum time to enable you to engage either with voluntary work or with some relevant small amount of paid employment, for example. So it means that the timetable is designed in quite a nice way to provide spaces for independent study, but also any kind of volunteering that you would want to engage with as well. Is that sufficient for that Q&A?
Yeah, I think that answers brilliantly.
That's awesome. Do we have any more questions at all?
We'll just give it a second. I think that might be all the questions for today. by the looks of it.
Well, if you have joined us today, thank you so much. We would really look forward to welcoming you when the campus can be open. It's a really beautiful place to visit, so I would encourage you to, at the point when you can make a visit to Liverpool, if you're not already from Liverpool, then I'd encourage you to join us whenever you can.
Okay, great. Thanks for attending, everyone. If you've got any other questions, there's email addresses there for you, or there's loads of contact details on the website for the various different areas and subjects and stuff as well. So thank you very much, and thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Jen. Bye.
Bye.